LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the October 4th edition of LiberalViewer Monday Media Mixup. Thanks for joining me. I'll be using the 14 best, most newsworthy clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, along with a couple clips at the beginning for political comedy from the season premiere of Saturday Night Live on Saturday night, of course, on Saturday night. My topic this week is kind of after the cliffhanger topic last week as to whether it was Biden's and Democrats' last chance. Well, it turns out no, it wasn't their last chance, because the big infrastructure deal, the bipartisan infrastructure deal, and then the Democrats' only, you call it a social spending bill, human infrastructure, but that supposedly $3.5 trillion bill that was supposed to go with the infrastructure deal has been delayed. That was the big topic this week, and that's what I'll be covering with almost all of my clips. But, of course, as my topic says, the deal was delayed, but progressives are winning. And based on the news summaries and especially the newsmaker clips I'm going to show you, I think that will become pretty clear by the end of the episode. In addition to showing you the news summaries from all five of the big corporate outlets, I will show you the four mainstream media outlets, meaning not Fox News, all cross-examining progressives. Bernie Sanders, Pramila Jayapal, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will be cross-examined by those four networks. And then I will compare that to the way the Fox News Sundays Chris Wallace cross-examines Wyoming Senator John Barrasso. And spoiler alert, Fox News does a very biased job as usual. And then I'll end the program with an off-topic clip, but it's also, speaking of Fox News bias, I guess apparently Dr. Anthony Fauci started the war on Christmas early this year or something on Face the Nation. That's the last clip I'll show you, is that Face the Nation clip where Dr. Fauci talked about whether we'll be able to get together for Christmas or not this year. And before I get to all that, though, I did promise two Saturday Night Live clips, one from the cold open, where they were parodying the Democrats trying to unite, and especially, and watch this carefully, the Cicely Strong parody of Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema, which I think is really important politically for reasons I will talk about with you a little more after we watch that first clip together over here.
On one side, we have the moderate Democrats, Kyrsten Sinema from Arizona.
What do I want from this bill? I'll never tell, because I didn't come to Congress to make friends. And so far, mission accomplished.
Is it just me, or does she look like all the characters from Scooby-Doo at the same time? And another pain in my keister, the de facto president of the United States, Joe Manchin from West Virginia.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a Democrat from West Virginia. If I vote for electric cars, they're gonna kill me.
There's a lot of good stuff in this bill, like 12 weeks of paid family leave.
6 days.
6 whole days of paid.
Well, unpaid.
Unpaid 6 whole days.
Nights.
6 nights of unpaid family half leave. It's not a bad compromise, right? And what do you want in return?
What about a child tax credit?
Great idea. Always said children shouldn't pay taxes. It's a lot of math.
But if we give children too much leeway, how are they gonna get them to work in the mines, you know? We need their tiny hands to dig. All the big pieces of coal are gone. We need the little kid fingers to gather the little pieces.
Okay, then let's get real basic. Roads. Everyone okay with roads?
I like roads.
Me too. Roads are where trucks live.
Kirsten?
I want no roads.
No roads? Why?
Chaos.
Fine, let's focus on the two things that have polled best with all Americans. Lowering the price of prescription drugs.
No.
And raising taxes on billionaires. All right, then, just tell us, Kirsten, what do you like? What is good to you?
Yellow starbursts, the film The Polar Express, and when someone eats fish on an airplane.
So anyway, if you want to see that entire cold open, there's a link down under the heading Sources, of the source of all my clips. including that Saturday Night Live cold open. What I was talking about before I showed the clip, I think it's good that Kyrsten Sinema is getting parodied as making ridiculous demands that make no sense, because that is really kind of what's been going on if you've been watching the political news carefully. But Saturday Night Live brings it home to some maybe lower information voters, and that's something that's going to hurt her image. And I comparing Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, I can understand why Joe Manchin has to be so conservative, because he's from West Virginia, which is a state that Trump won over Biden by like 30 points or something. But Kyrsten Sinema, she's from a purple state, as purple as my shirt here, and Biden actually won Arizona, even after the bogus cyber ninja recount. Biden still won Arizona. So why is Kyrsten Sinema? I mean, she's not the only senator from Arizona. What's the other guy's name? Mark, the astronaut. You can let me know down in the comment section. For some reason, I'm blanking on his name, but the other senator from Arizona has no problem with signing on board there. So signing on board with both the bipartisan package and the larger Democratic Build Back Better plan. And so I think that she deserves to get that parody. My one quibble with some of the things, if I'm going to give credit to Saturday Night Live for transmitting that factual information about Kyrsten Sinema to low information voters, I also kind of have to criticize them for for how they portrayed that as like Joe Biden giving in to Kyrsten Sinema, like in the family leave part, like it's going to be 6 days, 5 days, during the day, at night, or whatever. But actually the progressives are winning, as I'll show you later. And then that parody of Joe Manchin saying, he wants kids to be able to work in the mines. Well, that's one thing I forgot to tell you. When I get to that Fox News Sunday interview with Wyoming Senator John Barrasso, there's one point in the interview where I think that he wants 3- and 4-year-olds to work to have to work to get their daycare. That's at least one interpretation of what John Barrasso says. So you may think that A.D. Bryant there was doing a parody of Republicans, but it actually almost comes true when I get to that clip. But I want to give you one more look at jokes from Saturday Night Live. I saw Bill Maher over on Friday, and his monologue was talking about how hard it is to make infrastructure interesting or funny, and that was kind of the beginning theme of Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live on Saturday. Over in the second political comedy clip I will show you over here.
It's Weekend Update with Colin, Jost, and Michael Che.
Good evening. Hello, everyone.
Welcome to Weekend Update. I am Michael Che.
I'm Colin, Jost. Very nice to be back with you. First show last season, COVID was raging everywhere. There was no vaccine. We were in the middle of an intense election. And just before we went on the air, the producers were like, hey, real quick, the president might be dying. Anyway, have fun out there. It was an exciting time for the show. The big story this year, infrastructure. I guess that's an improvement on like a survival of the human race level, but it's not great for TV. So if we could all just pretend to be excited about this next joke, I'd really appreciate it. The infrastructure bill has been delayed indefinitely, so I guess we'll just cross that bridge when it collapses on top of us.
President Biden met with House Democrats yesterday to make a case for his Build Back Better budget plan. And no matter what you think about Biden's plan, you gotta admire the confidence of a guy with a stutter naming something the Build Back Better budget plan.
So I actually thought that those were both pretty good jokes. After Saturday Night Live said it was hard to make infrastructure funny, which I guess infrastructure is kind of boring. Though, I mean, trillions of dollars in spending to transform both the physical and the human infrastructure of the United States is actually going to do a lot if it actually gets passed. I thought that actually Saturday Night Live was pretty good coming back this season. I put, like I said, there's a link down in the video description to the entire Saturday Night Live episode on the NBC website. I noticed they put up until this season's premiere, you could click on that link and then just watch the whole episode. It was only there for a few weeks, but now it looks like you have to either sign up for NBC Universal something or other, or use your cable provider to sign in, which I think that's kind of bogus. So that would be my criticism. Why do they have to do that? But I guess it's all part of the trying to make the Peacock streaming service more desirable, or they also just got in this whole fight with YouTube TV. NBC and YouTube TV had this big fight in the last few weeks. But anyway, I don't want to go off on that whole tangent, but I would say that almost all of Saturday Night Live is still uploaded for free in segments on their Saturday Night Live channel on YouTube. There are links. I put links down in the video description to the clip or the full segments of those last two, the cold open and the beginning of Weekend Update. But then if you then click on the Saturday Night Live channel, you can watch pretty much the whole thing for free if you want to. I just wanted to say that, and now I'm going to get to the news summaries. And the thing about the news summaries, they're all pretty much about the same thing, although they frame it a little bit differently, especially Fox News, but then also Face the Nation framed it more as a fight within the Democratic Party. Otherwise, it was more about the big fights in Congress this week, and I'm going to show you them from longest to shortest, and as usual, Chuck Todd had the biggest, longest package again this week, where he talked about the fight in Congress over the government shutdown, the debt ceiling, the bipartisan infrastructure deal, and then that larger social spending bill. I think he calls it a social spending bill, the Build Back Better bill, that Michael Che was just making fun of Joe Biden for choosing that name as a former stutterer. But anyway, I'll talk about the news summaries. Like I said, I'm going to juxtapose all 5 of them from longest to shortest, so you can decide who told it best. Starting with NBC News' Meet the Press over here.
Good Sunday morning. Well, at least Congress made sure the government didn't shut down, but that's not all that didn't happen this past week. Democrats with slim majorities and big differences of opinion did not manage to pass either of their 2 big priorities. Moderate Democrats wanted to pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill and keep negotiating on the progressives' larger social spending wish list. That didn't happen. Progressive Democrats wanted more certainty on that social spending bill before voting for the infrastructure bill. And that didn't happen. Here's what did happen. President Biden traveled to Capitol Hill, told both sides their 2 priorities are now linked, which is just what progressives wanted to hear, and that the infrastructure bill will have to wait for an agreement on the larger social spending bill. Mr. Biden's decision left moderates feeling betrayed and progressives feeling emboldened because their Stay Strong approach had been validated at the highest level. It may still take weeks to get this done. The gamble now for Democrats is by delaying a sure thing that everyone wants, that bipartisan infrastructure bill, they risk getting nothing and having nothing to offer voters next year.
It doesn't matter whether it's in 6 minutes, 6 days, or 6 weeks. We're going to get it done.
President Biden putting his popular bipartisan $1 trillion infrastructure bill on hold after a rebellion by progressives.
Everyone wants these roads and bridges, but people aren't going to remember a road the way they will remember if they wake up in the morning and they now have childcare so they can go back to work.
We need a vote. We need to be real. Are we going to deliver universal pre-K to this country or not?
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi had promised to call a vote on the bipartisan infrastructure bill on Monday.
Bring the bill to the floor tomorrow for consideration.
Then again on Thursday.
be a vote today.
But put it off on Friday for a third time without the votes to pass it.
Speaker Pelosi, will there be a vote today? When we have the votes.
The decision was a blow to the party's moderate wing.
Is this a setback for the president's agenda and the Democratic agenda?
If we get it done, it'll be a victory. The question is, when do we get that victory?
New Jersey Congressman Josh Gottheimer, a moderate, criticized Pelosi, saying she breached her firm public commitment to bring the bill up for a vote in September, and lashed out at a small far-left faction of the House.
Everybody's frustrated. It's part of being in government.
The president told House Democrats in a closed-door meeting on Capitol Hill to lower the price tag to between $1.9 and $2.3 trillion, closer to what West Virginia Senator Manchin is demanding.
My top line has been 1.5 because I believe in my heart that what we can do and what the needs we have right now and what we can afford to do without basically changing our whole society to an entitlement mentality.
Arizona's Kyrsten Sinema, another wild card, has privately said she will not support corporate or income tax rate increases. On Saturday, she called the two-track process an ineffective stunt.
We could bring the moderates and progressives together very easily if we had 2 more votes. Yeah. 2.
Progressives say even a smaller bill must address their priorities: housing, climate change, child care, elder care, and paid family leave, immigration, and a Medicare expansion.
We need to have a way to verify that whatever we agree to does not get delayed and does not get changed.
Biden campaigned on his ability to bring people together and deliver, contrasting his pragmatism with opponent Bernie Sanders in the primary.
Can you get it done? Have you ever done anything big? Have you ever been able to put together coalitions?
Now, he is being challenged to make good on that promise.
50-50. Come on, man. Unite the party. 50-50. I got it.
And joining me now is Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. He's, of course, the...
And I will have 2 Bernie Sanders clips, including Chuck Todd's interview of Bernie Sanders, and I will juxtapose that with Jonathan Karl's interview of him over on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. But before I get to those newsmaker clips, I do want to juxtapose all of these news summaries. I think the ABC one is just slightly shorter. It uses a different format. Instead of Chuck Todd, where he does that live introduction, then he does the pre-recorded package. That's why every week I talk about the length of his package. That's what that pre-recorded video that he narrates is called, is his package. So that is, I don't know, do you think that's better than sort of this colloquy between Jonathan Karl and their reporter, whose name is Rachel Scott, who... it's pretty much the same information, but it's delivered as sort of a conversation. I don't know whether you think that's better than Chuck Todd's package. You can let me know what you think after we watch it together over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. For much of this week, President Biden stayed out of public sight as Democrats fought bitterly among themselves. When he emerged Friday to meet with Democrats on Capitol Hill, there were 2 schools of thought about what he was up to. Either he had a plan to break the impasse and push for a vote, or he was making a desperate attempt to bring his fractured Democratic majority together. It turned out it was neither. This morning, lawmakers are back home, the president is at his retreat in Delaware, and the fate of the Biden agenda is anything but certain. In a way, the spectacle that unfolded this week was an unforced error created by an artificial deadline. Biden still has time. The real question is whether he has the votes. After all, he is attempting to pass a program as ambitious and expensive as FDR's New Deal or LBJ's Great Society. But FDR and LBJ enjoyed huge Democratic majorities. Biden's majority is razor thin. And time may not help. There is increasing tension among moderate and progressive Democrats and a sense that the White House is falling short. As one Democratic lawmaker told ABC News, quote, "Most of us are at a loss for words. There was no plan, no strategy, no timing." ABC's Rachel Scott has covered it all for us this week, and she joins us now from Capitol Hill. So, Rachel, where are things this morning? What comes next.
Well, John, good morning. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has already had to push this vote off twice. Now she has set a new deadline of October 31st. That gives President Biden roughly 4 weeks to try and unite his party to pass his domestic agenda. And this is proving not to be easy. Tensions between progressives and moderates are only worsening. Senator Kyrsten Sinema, a key holdout there in the Senate, releasing a blistering statement saying it's not only deeply disappointing, but inexcusable for the House not to pass and vote on that bipartisan infrastructure package immediately. She also says that it erodes the trust needed for these good faith negotiations. She went on to call the strategy by progressives ineffective. But progressives this morning are flexing their muscles. They know that their strategy is working, and they have the votes to block that bipartisan infrastructure package until their party reaches a deal on that much larger social spending bill that includes funding to combat climate change and for child care. The cost of that is $3.5 trillion over 10 years. I'm told when the president met with Democrats here on Friday, he told them that number is likely to come down to roughly $2 trillion. But even that is still too high for some moderates there in the Senate. And as you know, John, he cannot afford to lose a single vote.
So, Rachel, on that point, where are Republicans in all of this? Because, of course, that bipartisan deal passed in the Senate with 19 Republican senators voting yes. Is there still significant or any Republican support in the House for at least that first bipartisan, or what has been a bipartisan infrastructure bill?
Well, John, I was talking to one Republican aide who told me that Democrats linking these two items together is, quote, the poison pill. House Republican leadership is now encouraging its members to vote against the bipartisan infrastructure package. Now only a handful of Republicans even seem open to the idea, but they were frustrated by Speaker Pelosi pushing this off yet again, and they may reconsider. Now, of course, Democrats do not need any Republican support to get this passed, but they need to get their party united first, John.
Thank you, Rachel Scott. And joining me now, the senator in the middle of it all, budget chairman in the Senate, Bernie Sanders.
And like I said, I will have a large portion of that Bernie Sanders interview coming up. But one thing I thought Rachel Scott added that was important there is that this bipartisan infrastructure deal that got 19 Republican votes and all 50 Democrats, so 69 votes in the Senate, is looking like it's not going to get any Republican votes in the House, which to me seems like a mistake by Republicans, because the reason those 19 Republican senators voted for the bipartisan infrastructure deal is so that they could go back to their constituents and say, you know, I voted for these, you know, roads and bridges and whatever in our state. But senators only have to do that every 6 years. Members of Congress have to go back every 2 years. And you would think some of these Republicans would want to say that, and you would think the people running against those Republicans who vote against the bipartisan infrastructure deal will go back and run against them by saying they voted against the money that's going to fix this road and this bridge and whatever right here in this congressional district. So that's an important point, although I wanted to elaborate on it a little bit. And now, that report did talk a lot about the fighting between Democrats, and, you know, all the reports do, but it's a fight in Congress, and there are Republicans involved, like I was just talking about. You wouldn't really know it so much listening to Chris Wallace and David Spunt, where they talk about how this is like a big split in the Democratic Party over in the next longest news summary from Fox News Sunday yesterday. In the clip I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Hello again from Fox News in Washington. Well, this was supposed to be the week House Democrats passed that bipartisan infrastructure plan and gave President Biden a much-needed legislative victory. But this Sunday, the party is still deadlocked between moderates who want infrastructure and progressives who are determined to block that bill until they get the massive social spending they want. President Biden is now talking about taking weeks trying to resolve the differences inside his own party. The real danger that he ends up with neither part of his domestic agenda. In a moment, we'll speak with Biden's senior advisor, Cedric Richmond, and California Congressman Ro Khanna, a key member of the progressive wing. But first, let's bring in David Spunt at the White House with the latest on the effort to find a compromise. David.
Hi, Chris. As a U.S. Senator, Joe Biden spent almost 40 years on Capitol Hill compromising. Finding a compromise in this Congress will be tough, but he's not giving up.
There's nothing in any of these pieces of legislation that's radical, that is unreasonable.
Before leaving for a weekend in Delaware, a confident President Biden said he'll take his time, pushing both items on his wish list, but telling progressives they must come off their $3.5 trillion top line for their social spending bill.
We need to be real. Are we going to deliver universal pre-K to this country or not? Are we going to expand health care to our seniors and include vision and dental or not?
While moderates led by Congressman Josh Gottheimer have no appetite for the delays, writing, "It's deeply regrettable that Speaker Pelosi breached her firm public commitment to members of Congress and the American people to hold a vote and to pass the once-in-a-century bipartisan infrastructure bill on or before September 27th. In a Saturday letter to her caucus, Speaker Nancy Pelosi wrote, "We will and must pass both bills soon. We have the responsibility and the opportunity to do so." But centrists like Gottheimer are focused on the infrastructure bill, and they have support from Republicans.
That is what's wrong with Washington, D.C. We don't put the needs of the American people first. We put some other agenda, and nothing ever happens.
Negotiations, Chris, are ongoing until this comes to a vote. Meanwhile, there's another clock ticking, raising the nation's debt ceiling until it hits its limit in just a few weeks. Chris?
David Spunt reporting from the White House. David, thank you. And joining us now, senior advisor.
And Cedric Richmond, who's a former member of Congress, who you saw there, and now is an advisor to Biden, was on a couple programs. I'm not going to show clips from his interviews. Like I said, the Fox News Sunday clip I'm going to show later is Chris Wallace's pretty biased interview of Wyoming Senator John Barrasso. But do you notice David Spunt there also mentioned the debt ceiling, but didn't say that Republicans are refusing to raise the debt ceiling to pay for money that they spent during the Trump administration? I was talking about that last week. I mean, if you're going to mention the debt ceiling, I think you should probably include that. And do you see what the point I was making about the Fox News Sunday news summary compared to the previous two, the way it emphasizes Democrats saying, mean things about other Democrats and fighting with other Democrats, that would, I mean, not that that wasn't covered in the other news summaries. I just think that it was much more emphasized, but you can let me know since we've watched the three news summaries together. The next two are much shorter. This first is the 90-second news summary from CNN State of the Union, Dana Bash. In line with the Meet the Press and ABC news summaries, but much shorter, and I will talk about it with you a little more after we watch that news summary together over here.
Hello, I'm Dana Bash in Washington, where the State of our Union is watching to see if President Biden can deliver. The new clock starts now for Democrats after a week of frenzied infighting and 2 delayed votes. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi set a new deadline for her party, writing in a letter to her caucus Saturday that the bipartisan infrastructure bill must pass before October 31st, which means the party must also reach consensus on the larger social policy bill, the centerpiece of President Biden's agenda. Because Friday, President Biden made clear now that he believes those 2 packages are linked, saying that to all House Democrats during a rare trip to Capitol Hill to try to calm tensions in the party. And while his negotiating skills may have worked in the short term, there are signs his decision to effectively side with progressives and by endorsing the move to delay the infrastructure vote may have actually caused real damage with the moderate wing. Saturday, Senator Kyrsten Sinema, one of 2 Senate holdouts on the social policy bill, released a scathing statement calling the move to delay infrastructure, quote, inexcusable, and accused Democratic leaders of eroding trust within the party. Now the question will be whether there is enough trust left for President Biden to make significant cuts to his cornerstone legislation to win support from moderate holdouts without losing votes from the powerful progressive bloc. Joining me now is the chair of the House Progressive Caucus, Pramila Jayapal.
And I will have an extended Pramila Jayapal clip coming up. But do you see how Dana Bash there, the one thing that I think was emphasized in that shorter news summary from her was that Biden may have damaged trust with moderates. I mean, even Fox News Sunday, they showed how there was all that sniping, but and they showed the statements that moderates had made, but I don't know that at least Dan Abash recognized that progressives won, but I mean, what really happened, I mean, in my opinion, and I think you'll see from the newsmaker clips I'm going to show in a minute, that progressives held together, and where in previous confrontations like this, say the Affordable Care Act, when Obamacare passed, basically, progressives, they wanted a public option, and they were told, you got to give up on that or this isn't going to pass. Well, this time, progressives are stronger and they have more votes, and so I think that they said that, they flexed their muscles and they held for what Biden had promised, although it's not really some left-wing progressive agenda they're going for, which I'll talk about when I get to the newsmaker clips also. This is Biden's Build Back Better agenda. This is what he ran on. This is what he talked about at the State of the Union. So, I don't know. Talking about it as a breach of trust, I mean, I think this is just like regular politics. You have different factions of the Democratic Party that want different things, and earlier, months ago, I was talking about how Biden was dealing with the problem through strategic ambiguity by not really saying what, sometimes he'd say the bills were linked and sometimes he'd say they weren't linked, there was definitely some ambiguous obfuscation going on, but that's just getting through the politics of it. And I guess October 31st, if that's going to be the real deadline, that's when we're going to find out how much gets done. And anyway, before I get to that, I'm going to show you the shortest of the news summaries. It's CBS News Face the Nation, Margaret Brennan doing like a short version of the Fox News Sunday news summary, I guess. Sometimes CBS does seem to be kind of Fox News light. I've said that over the years. But anyway, here's Margaret Brennan in the final news summary. I'll talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. These are interesting times here in Washington. We're used to the political battles being back and forths between Republicans and Democrats. But today we find ourselves in an increasingly polarized debate between Democrats. The factions within the party, the progressives or liberals, and the moderates. We asked some of the key moderates on both sides of Congress to join us this morning, and they didn't take us up on our invitation. But we do begin today with a key progressive, New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
And I'm going to have an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez clip. In fact, that was the last of the news summaries. I've juxtaposed all 5 of them. I think I've criticized them enough, so you can let me know which one was best, or which was the best news summary, which was the most biased news summary. Fox News was the most biased one. But it's a little more subtle than most of the Fox News bias you see. They don't have like the Biden's tax and spending spree chyron that same information, that same news summary would get if they did it, during the daytime, during the week. But anyway, now I want to get to the newsmaker clips. And the first 2 I'm going to show you are both interviews of Bernie Sanders. It's like the first 7 minutes, or roughly 7 minutes, so I can get to the end of an answer. But 7 minutes from ABC juxtaposed with 7 minutes from NBC. And, well, let's watch them together, and you tell me whether you think Jonathan Karl does a better job of both getting information from Bernie Sanders and cross-examining him, or is it Chuck Todd on Meet the Press? Let's start over here. 7 minutes, 15 seconds from Jonathan Karl on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos yesterday, talking to Bernie Sanders over here.
The bottom line, where do things stand now?
Well, I think we're going to make real progress, and I think, Jonathan, we're going to do what the American people want us to do. And the American people are very clear. They want to substantially lower the cost of prescription drugs. They want to expand home health care so that people are not forced out of their homes into nursing homes. They want to expand Medicare so that elderly people can have dental care, can have hearing aids, can have eyeglasses. They want us to address the existential threat of climate change. And I'll tell you what else they want. They are sick and tired of the rich getting richer and not paying their fair share of taxes, and they want this reconciliation bill to be paid for by doing away with the loopholes that the wealthy and large corporations enjoy. So we have the American people very, very strongly on our side. We've got the President of the United States on our side. We've got 96% of the members of the Democratic caucus in the House on our side. We got all but 2 senators at this point and the Democratic caucus on our side. We're going to win this thing. We're going to pass a strong infrastructure bill to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, and we're going to pass a reconciliation bill.
All right, I want to get to one of those 2 senators that is not with you right now. Senator Sinema, as we heard Rachel Scott refer to, put out a lengthy statement overnight about the failure of the House to vote on that infrastructure bill. She said, in part, the failure of the U.S. House to hold a vote on Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is inexcusable and deeply disappointing for communities across our country. Denying Americans millions of good-paying jobs, safer roads, cleaner water, more reliable electricity, and better broadband only hurts everyday families. She accuses you, Senator, and other progressives of pulling off what she calls an ineffective stunt and holding that infrastructure bill hostage to the larger social infrastructure bill. Your response?
Well, I think Senator Sinema is wrong. I think from day one, Jonathan, it has been clear. President of the United States has said it. Speaker of the House Pelosi has made it clear. Our Majority Leader in the Senate, Schumer, has made it clear. Both of these bills are going forward in tandem. Going forward in tandem. We've got to pass them both. I voted for the infrastructure bill. It is an important bill. I'm a former mayor. I know how much we've got to address our crumbling infrastructure and create jobs there. But I also know that elderly people in this country cannot chew their food because they don't have teeth in their mouth. I know that the American people are sick and tired of paying 10 times more for prescription drugs than the people of Canada and in other countries. I know that there are young people out there who would love the opportunity to get a higher education but can't afford community college. We're going to make 2 years of community college tuition free. And I also know that the scientists are telling us that if we do not act boldly in terms of cutting carbon emissions, that the planet we're leaving our kids and grandchildren will be increasingly uninhabitable. And let me also say this, Jonathan. We're not just taking on or dealing with Senators Manchin or Senator Sinema. We're taking on the entire ruling class of this country. Right now, the drug companies, the health insurance companies, the fossil fuel industry are spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to prevent us from doing what the American people want. And this really is a test of whether or not American democracy can work. The Republican Party is bought and paid for by the pharmaceutical industry. They're not going to do anything. But I hope very much, and I expect, that the Democratic caucus and the president, I know he will, stand firm and tell the drug companies, stop ripping us off. Well, tell the insurance companies that the American people need. The elderly people need dental care, hearing aids, and eyeglasses. People need home health care. Our young people need the quality child care that they deserve.
So let me ask you about where the president is on this. As I understand it, he has now floated a $2 trillion top-line number on this broader bill. You are at 3.5. I remember you initially wanted closer to $6 trillion. Are you comfortable with the idea of cutting this down to about $2 trillion?
No, well, first of all, I'm not sure that that's accurate. As you know, there's a lot of gossip that goes on. What the president has said is that there's going to have to be some give and take, and I think that that's right. I think, if anything, Jonathan, when we especially talk about the crisis of climate change and the need to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel, the $6 trillion that I originally proposed was probably too little. $3.5 trillion should be a minimum, but I accept that there's going to have to be give and take. But at the end of the day, the real
so give and take, but not $2 trillion. That's not enough. Because the president also said that a smaller investment could create historic achievements. But $2 trillion is not enough.
What the president is saying is that what we are trying to do is for the working families of this country, for the children, for the elderly, we're trying to pass the most consequential piece of legislation since the Great Depression. And he's right. You know, so the bottom line is we have got to pass it. We've got to pass the infrastructure bill. And the American people are going to have to stand up. You know what bothers me about this whole thing? Poll after poll shows what we are doing is exactly what the American people want. It's not what the big money interest wants, not what the lobbyists wants. It's what the American people want. And we got to do it.
Now, Senator Manchin's the other senator in the middle of this. He's been consistent. We actually had him on this program back in July. And let me play you what he said about his top line number back then. But what's your bottom line? The question is, this is over $1 trillion.
The bottom line.
Bernie Sanders wants $6 more trillion. Here's what are you? How far are you willing to go?
I want to make sure we pay for it. I do not want to add more debt on. So if that's $1 trillion or $1.5 or $2 trillion, whatever that comes out to be over a 10-year period, that's what I would be voting for.
So, I mean, basic math tells me if you have Sinema and you have Manchin both unwilling to go above that.
If you just listen, Jonathan, if you just listen to what Manchin said, he said he wants it to be paid for. He's right. I want it to be paid for. And in fact, that is exactly what we are going to do. And if it's $3.5 trillion, we can pay for it because, as everybody knows, you got some of the wealthiest people in this country who in a given year don't pay a penny in federal income tax. Large corporations don't pay a nickel in federal income tax. So if Manchin wants to pay for it, I'm there. Let's do it. And by the way, you could pay for it at $3.5 trillion. You could pay for it at $6 trillion. We have massive income and wealth inequality in this country. But
as you know,
we can do that.
I mean.
So yeah, that's the first 7 minutes of Jonathan Karl's interview with Bernie Sanders. There's a little more of it. Like I said, the source of all my clips is down in the video description, along with summaries of all the clips that I've started putting down there. One thing I think I was talking about last week, how Pramila Jayapal did not talk about dental, vision, and hearing enough. Because I don't know why those things, why doesn't health insurance cover those things anyway? Why is it like dental, that part of your body, get different insurance and your eye, whatever? And as I was saying last week, I think, especially for older voters who are the voters who are have the highest turnout rate, although that may be changing a little bit, but for older voters, the dental, hearing, vision, I mean, I'm kind of becoming a older voter myself, and I definitely need the dental coverage and the vision coverage. So far the hearing's okay, but I don't know, I could see how that might be a good thing to get the vote out for the midterm elections in November 2022. I do like some of Jonathan Karl's questions there. Like he showed that whole Kyrsten Sinema statement. I don't think Chuck Todd does that in the next clip when he talks. Well, maybe. I can't remember. We'll see when we juxtapose it with the next clip. He did do this thing that I find kind of annoying, where they try to get the negotiating politicians to negotiate with themselves on TV, which that seems to be like a losing proposition and kind of a waste of time, although you do get them to bring out their talking points like dental, vision, hearing, etc. And then Jonathan Karl, this is I definitely remember this as something I wanted to juxtapose with the Chuck Todd clip. Jonathan Karl shows how Joe Manchin back in July was already saying what his number that he wanted, around $1.5 trillion or whatever, while over on in Chuck Todd's interview, he pulls out there was this signed statement from Joe Manchin and Joe Biden about the $1.5 trillion number from last July that was supposedly like a secret agreement that just came out in the last several days. But as you just saw from that clip, Joe Manchin was not making his negotiating position a secret. And I think Bernie Sanders pretty much debunks that in this next clip, both talking about how it was public and how they've been negotiating. They didn't just start negotiating a few days ago. But anyway, I think I've talked enough between the clips, and I want you to be able to juxtapose this is a little shorter. I think it's like 7 minutes, 1 second from the beginning of Chuck Todd's interview of Bernie Sanders, pretty much the same time as that last one yesterday. Let me know what you think as we watch that second clip together over here.
Let me start with what apparently the president said behind closed doors to the House Democrats. And he floated the idea that, hey, this number is going to be a little bit lower, 1.9 trillion to 2.2 trillion. Have you accepted the fact that it's not going to be 3.5 trillion?
Chuck, that is, by the way, that is not my understanding of what he said. What he said is there's going to have to be give and take on both sides. I'm not clear that he did bring forth a specific number. But what the president also said, and what all of us are saying, is that maybe the time is now for us to stand up to powerful special interests who are currently spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to prevent us from doing what the American people want. We want to lower substantially prescription drug costs in this country so we're not paying 10 times more for certain drugs than Canada and other countries. And the pharmaceutical industry has 1,400 lobbyists on Capitol Hill right now trying to stop us. We want to deal with the existential threat of climate change. We want to deal with child care. We want to expand Medicare so elderly people can chew their food, can have hearing aids, can have eyeglasses, and we can pay for this by demanding that the wealthiest people and largest corporations finally start paying their fair share of taxes. That's what this struggle is about. Do we do what the American people want? Do we fulfill what democracy is supposed to be about? Or do we bow down to powerful special interests?
What is your preference when you're writing this bill? Look, I know what your initial preference was. You believe 3.5 trillion is the compromise, that you started at 6 trillion. But whatever the number ends up being agreed upon, do you believe in these programs? Because there's a large wish list and a set of needs the country has, but you might not be able to do all of them fully funded. Do you believe in trying to do as many of them as you can, and maybe that some of them are smaller programs and you'll vote on them in a couple years to extend the funding, or do you think you got to do 3 or 4 things really well?
Chuck, this is not a wish list. Climate change and cutting carbon emissions has everything to do with whether or not we leave this planet to future generations that is healthy and is habitable. Scientists tell us we got a few years. You want more workers out in the workforce. We need to reform child care so that 1 million women can come back to work and not have to pay as a family 20 or 30% of their income for child care. You have to have skilled workforce. We can't have a skilled workforce and do the good jobs that are out there unless we train young people. That's why we want to make community colleges tuition free. So this is not a wish list. This is what the working families of this country want and what the economy needs. The real question is, the Republicans, of course, are owned by the pharmaceutical industry and the fossil fuel industry. We don't expect them to do anything. But the question now is whether the Democrats can come together, and I think that we can, to finally do what working families in this country desperately want us to do.
You know, I'm curious, one of the things that we've observed here in our news division is we know we're going to be closer to a deal when we see you and Senator Manchin in the same room with the president. And I'm curious, Senator Schumer apparently had a memo that had the number that Senator Manchin was basically his beginning negotiating number. Was that news to you, or have you known this for a couple of months, where Senator Manchin stood on his red lines?
Well, Senator Manchin has in fact been public about talking. I think his number was $1.5 trillion. That's fine. That's a good negotiating start. Manchin has also said that he wants it paid for. I want it paid for, and you can pay for it with a $3.5 trillion bill by finally demanding that the wealthiest people in large corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. As you well know, Chuck, there's a given year when Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, the wealthiest people in this country, don't pay a nickel in federal income taxes. Large corporations don't pay a nickel. We address that. You could pay for a $3.5 trillion. You could pay for a $6 trillion bill and pay for it completely.
Yeah. I understand that, but was this a number you knew? Because a lot of people are wondering, hey, why are we waiting till this week to start these negotiations when apparently some of these, we knew Senator Manchin's starting number in July. It just felt like a lot of time was wasted.
Well, no, that's not accurate. I mean, there has been serious negotiations going on literally for months now, and, you know, there is a frustration that it has taken this long. I think I voted for the infrastructure bill. I think it's important that we rebuild our roads and our bridges and our water systems. That's very, very good. But it is absolutely imperative that we have a strong and comprehensive reconciliation bill which finally addresses the needs of working families. So, our job right now is to rally the American people to continue the negotiations, and I think at the end of the day, we're going to pass both pieces of legislation.
I want to talk about this issue of having them both linked together. I want you to react to what Senator Kyrsten Sinema said yesterday. Arizonans and all everyday Americans expect their lawmakers to consider legislation on the merits rather than obstruct new jobs and critical infrastructure investments for no substantive reason. What Americans have seen instead is an ineffective stunt to gain leverage over a separate proposal. She's referring to what happened in the House and the delay of that vote as a stunt. You were very supportive of the decision to hold off supporting that bill until everything was agreed upon. What do you say to Senator Sinema and to other moderates who don't like the linking of these two bills, that think it sort of sends a message of dysfunction to the rest of the country?
No, it's not a message of dysfunction, and I'm sure you remember. From the very beginning of this process, the President of the United States, Speaker Pelosi, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, made it clear we're going down this road in a dual way. Both bills have got to be linked together because there is a strong feeling on the part of many of us that if you just pass the infrastructure bill, which is a good bill, I voted for it, then we will not get to the bill that working families really want, that finally demands that the wealthiest people in this country start paying their fair share of taxes. So what we said is, look, we all want the infrastructure bill. Great. But we also have got to do the reconciliation bill, which addresses the long-neglected needs of working families and the elderly. Expanding Medicare to cover dental, hearing aids, and eyeglasses, doing child care, doing community colleges, enormously important for working families.
So one of the things that's interesting about juxtaposing those two clips is it shows like what a professional communicator Bernie Sanders is, in that it doesn't really matter so much what you ask him, you're going to get pretty much the same answers. And you see the content of what Bernie Sanders said was pretty similar, even though the questioning was somewhat different. You did hear about dental vision and hearing, people want to be able to see and hear and chew or whatever, the way he put it in this part. And I thought Chuck Todd did ask, a good question that you also hear Dana Bash talk to Pramila Jayapal about in the next clip as to, how are they going to negotiate down the price tag of the Build Back Better bill? Is it going to be fewer programs, or is it going to be the same programs pared down to fewer years, or other kind of budget mechanisms that bring down the cost? Like I said, after I showed the ABC clip, though, I thought Chuck Todd's repeated questioning, because he did do even like a follow-up question on the so-called secret memo that Joe Manchin signed with Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden as to his $1.5 trillion negotiating position. I don't know. I think was too big a deal in the media, and you saw Bernie Sanders there say that they have been negotiating the whole time, and it was kind of public. And Jonathan Karl even showed a clip of Joe Manchin back in July saying pretty much the same thing. I also, when I was talking about how professional Bernie Sanders is, I think he also does a good job of emphasizing not just the vision, dental, hearing thing, but something that's also extremely popular with the American people, which is that this whole bill is paid for by making the wealthiest Americans and large corporations pay their fair share. And that polls really well, and Bernie Sanders is really good at emphasizing that point. And I guess I wasn't sure when I showed the ABC clip how much NBC showed of Kyrsten Sinema's statement, but I guess they both pretty much played the whole thing. I do think what Bernie Sanders was saying there at the end about whether the bills should be linked, and he, in response to Kyrsten Sinema's statement, he said that, they were always linked. Well, I don't think that's exactly true. It's more like that strategic ambiguity I was talking about earlier. But anyway, I'm now going to juxtapose those two clips, the Senator Bernie Sanders clips, with the head of the House Progressive Caucus, talking to Dana Bash over on CNN State of the Union. And this clip is actually just a little bit longer. In some ways, I like Pramila Jayapal's approach a little bit better. I think she emphasizes like 5 major themes in the Build Back Better bill, maybe better than Bernie Sanders did in the last clip, although, like I said, he has his strong points in, the dental vision hearing and the make the wealthiest and large corporations pay their fair share. But anyway, I'll talk about all of that a little more after we watch the first. This isn't even the whole Pramila Jayapal interview on State of the Union, but it's like the first 8 minutes, 7 seconds, which was a good place to stop before they start talking about abortion and the Hyde Amendment. But there's some really important things at the end of this clip. That's why I keep it playing, about means testing, which will be especially important when we get to the John Barrasso clip a little bit later. But anyway, here's the 8-minute. That's enough pre-criticism of the clip. Now I will watch it with you and talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
It was a really extraordinary week. I have covered Washington for a long time, and this is the first time I have seen progressives have the numbers and the power and the will to use that power to hold the line on the issues that you're pushing. What do you think this week says about the progressive wing of the Democratic Party?
Well, Dana, it's great to see you and great to be with you. What I think is happening right now is progressives have helped push back onto the table, back onto the agenda, President Biden's agenda. I mean, this is really what happened. There was a Build Back Better agenda that the president laid out to Congress 5 months ago. It had infrastructure, roads and bridges, but it also had 85% of it was around these other important programs. Childcare, universal childcare, paid family leave for 12 weeks for everybody, making sure we're taking on the climate crisis, expanding health care, and of course, taking on the challenge of giving a path to citizenship for immigrants. All of that ended up in something called the Build Back Better Act. And all of a sudden, Dana, we thought we made clear 3.5 months ago that the two had to move together because we don't want to pit roads and bridges against childcare. And we know that the president doesn't want to do that either. But when that changed and suddenly a small group of people, 4% of the entire House Democratic caucus and the Senate Democratic caucus said, we only want the bipartisan infrastructure bill to go. And that's after 5 months of negotiating. We had to stand up and get the whole thing back together. And that's what I think has happened now. We've put the bills back together, as was the original agreement, and we are going to deliver both bills, the infrastructure bill, which is important, and the Build Back Better Act.
Not everybody agreed that that was the agreement. I'll get to that in a second. I'm sure you've seen Congressman Josh Gottheimer and Senator Kyrsten Sinema, both moderate Democrats. They released scathing statements over the weekend. Gottheimer accused you and your fellow progressives of employing Freedom Caucus tactics. Senator Sinema called your move an ineffective stunt, saying the delay further erodes trust and that she does not trade her vote for political favors. Those are pretty harsh words. Those are fellow Democrats.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because we believe that it was a bad move to put an arbitrary date on this infrastructure bill and to delink the two to start with. We have been very clear for 3.5 months. And, I've said to news media when they say, well, they're two senators, I say, listen, we've got a very slim majority in the House as well. And we should be clear that this was a majority of our caucus. So it's not just a few people. We had over 60 votes, and that number was increasing, of people who were desperately committed to the idea that we're not leaving anybody behind.
Right. But at least Senator Sinema is opposed to some of the substance of what you're pushing. And with the 50-50 Senate, you have leverage in the House. They have leverage in the Senate. So now the pressure is on for you to deliver. And you know that, I'm sure. I want to talk about negotiations. Some top Democrats and White House officials are floating a $2.1 trillion package, a lot smaller than what you are currently at, $3.5 trillion. Are you open to $2.1 trillion?
Well, what we've said from the beginning is it's never been about the price tag. It's about what we want to deliver. The price tag comes out of that. So we understand that we, the 3.5 we thought was negotiated already is clearly not negotiated. We understand we have to get 50 senators on board, and we have to keep everyone in the House on board. And so we are now going back to make sure what is the way that we can get all of the critical programs that we had identified, those things I talked to you about, childcare, paid leave, climate.
And I'm going to get to that in a second.
Yeah, how do we get all of those things in, but but perhaps for a shorter period of time, and be able to get then to the number from that. The critical thing is let's get our priorities in, and then we'll figure out what it actually costs.
And I understand that, but there is a lot of focus, and a lot of the negotiating is on that top line number. For example, is 2 trillion, 2.1 trillion your absolute floor?
We're not thinking about the number. And the president said this to us too. He said, don't start with the number. Start with what you're for, and that's what he's asked them for. And then let's come to the number from there. So that's how we're thinking about it.
And that makes sense, but you have been looking at this for a long time. You have been looking at the policies and what it adds up to and how you can do it. I mean, this is what your focus has been almost solely.
Yeah.
So you, I'm sure, have looked at whether or not you can do what you want to do for $2 trillion.
Well, we don't know what the number is yet. There's no number on the table yet that is everyone has agreed to. It's not like they've come to us and said, I don't feel the need to give a number because I gave my number. It was 3.5. So if you're in a negotiation, you need to have a counteroffer before you bid against yourself.
So if we're not looking at numbers, what about 1.5, like what Senator
Well,
Manchin
that's not going to happen.
But
so
why
it's
is
going to
that?
be somewhere.
But why won't it add up to that
Because
number?
that's too small to get our priorities in. So it's going to be somewhere, between 1.5 and 3.5. And I think the White House is working on that right now because remember, what we want to deliver is childcare, paid leave, climate change.
And I want to get to that, but so 1.5 is too small, but you won't say if 2 trillion is too small.
Because I don't have a definite number yet. I mean, I don't have a counteroffer.
Okay.
It would be like buying a house, Dana, and going in to make an offer, and then somebody says, well, what's the lowest number you would take? Why would I do that?
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about the substance because that does matter more than anything right now. And because there's so much that you're talking about, I want to put up for our viewers on the screen some of the specific policies. Universal pre-K, childcare, tuition-free community college, paid medical and family leave, the child tax credit, making it permanent, a dental and vision, hearing coverage for Medicare, home care for seniors, and sweeping climate provisions. So looking at all of that, Congresswoman, what is your strategy to negotiate? Are you thinking about keeping all of those programs in and just making the time that you're going to allow them to be out there shorter? Are you going to cut some of those programs? What's your plan?
Well, that's the things that you mentioned are priorities. So our idea now is to look at how you make them funded for a little bit of a shorter time. And, we're also going through some of the smaller things that were in there just to see what are those things and do they need to be in there as well. That right there will probably cut out a decent amount. Small things that were in there or things that we might be able to fund through an appropriations process. So we're going through and looking at all of that.
What do you think would be cut
we're not quite there yet in terms of but there are a lot of items that were, $2 billion, $3 billion that if you put them all together, they add up to a bigger number. They might have been put there to keep somebody happy. So, we have to be careful as we pull them out of who we're going to lose, but I think that's the process we're going through.
Anything in there that's absolutely non-negotiable must be in there for a 10-year period?
For a 10-year period, I think that the clean electricity standards really do need to be in there for a 10-year period because it takes time to cut carbon emissions, and we need to have that certainty in order for the market to move in that direction. So that, I think, is one that really does need to be there for 10 years.
And what about means testing? Are you comfortable with means testing? That's what Joe Manchin wants, meaning people who can afford it won't get these benefits.
Well, all of the research shows means testing actually doesn't target it more, but it does create a lot of administrative burden and a lot more cost.
So is that enough?
So, it's not what I want to do. I'm actually just had a staff member do a paper for me on all the reasons why means testing is not a fiscally prudent thing to do or a policy prudent thing to do, but let's see, the negotiation's just starting.
Now remember that thing about means testing, I'll talk about that in a minute, but especially, like I said, remember it when we get to the John Barrasso clip, coming up clip after next. But like I said before, I showed the clip, I think Pramila Jayapal did some things better than Bernie Sanders. You know, she still didn't say dental, vision, hearing like Bernie Sanders did, and I criticized her last week for that. But she does have like the 5 basic things that she wants out of the Build Back Better plan. I don't know if you were following. Number 1 was universal child care. Number 2 was paid family leave for 12 weeks for everybody. Number 3, making sure we're taking on the climate crisis. Number 4, expanding health care. That's a little bit amorphous. That I guess the vision, dental, hearing is in there. And then number 5, taking on the challenge of giving a path to citizenship for immigrants, which I believe the parliamentarian in the Senate said can't even be put in the reconciliation bill. So Dana Bash did not follow up on that, on how one of her 5 things apparently can't even be put in reconciliation. I think Dana Bash spent too much time like doing that thing when, you know, what's your number, trying to get Pramila Jayapal to negotiate against herself, and she even like said, this is like I'm buying a house and I put my offer out and you want me to give you a second offer before I get my counter offer. So that was a good, easy to understand analogy for a lot of people out there who are watching, I guess. You notice Dana Bash did point out like 8 things that were in the Build Back Better bill, but never really noticed that Pramila Jayapal had only said 5 things. There were like 3 things in the list that Dana Bash was showing that weren't in Pramila Jayapal's 5 thing. Well, maybe. Well, tuition-free community college wasn't one of Representative Jayapal's 5 things. Making the child tax credit permanent, which is in the bill, not one of Pramila Jayapal's 5 things. And then home care for seniors, I don't know, that might, I mean, maybe that fits into expansion of health care, maybe it doesn't, I'm not sure. So that one's kind of borderline, but Dana Bash showed those 8 things, never mentioned that 2 or 3 of the 8 things weren't in Representative Jayapal's 5 things that she, so that seems like she's already given up on those, maybe. I did think Dana Bash asked a good question about what must be in the bill for 10 years, and Representative Jayapal's answer makes a lot of sense, that because climate change is something that's happening day by day, year by year, that's something we got to start on now and keep doing for 10 years, and especially because that will set the market for that part of the Build Back Better plan. So at least that was a good question and got a good answer. And then the means testing thing, I think that's something really important for people to understand, that it seems to make sense. Oh, you don't want to give free stuff to people who don't need it, like say 2 years free community college. Do you want to give that to everyone, or do you just want to give it to people whose parents make less than a certain amount of money per year? But what Representative Jayapal was talking about there in terms of the cost and the burden is, once you do means testing, that means somebody that means that even people who qualify, who should just be getting free community college, they have to go to the time and expense and effort of proving that they qualify. And that's not always easy for everybody to go through that process. And that means there's got to be somebody who's got to read those applications, and that's bureaucracy. And what studies have shown is that it actually stops a lot of people who should qualify for whatever the benefit is after the means testing. A lot of people don't end up getting the benefit just because they can't or won't, or for some reason they can't make it through the process, or don't have, for some reason. And anyway, that's one of the big problems with means testing. And the other part about means testing is it doesn't really matter if you give free community college to everybody, and then you just, on the richest people who you would be the ones who you would be means testing so they didn't get the free community college for their kids, well, you just tax them a little more, and that's how you get it back. And that's a lot more efficient than setting up a whole bureaucracy to admit and deny people into this benefit program. So and that's important. That's something that Chris Wallace doesn't talk about in the clip after next, when he's supposedly cross-examining Wyoming Senator John Barrasso. But before I get to that, oh wait, I have 2 more clips. That's right. I thought it was one more before John Barrasso, but I forgot. I have a clip of Margaret Brennan on CBS's Face the Nation having a similar conversation to the Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal conversations with a different kind of progressive leader. You know, Pramila Jayapal is the actual leader of the Progressive Caucus in the Congress. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is more of a communications leader, like a social media leader, like a media leader for the progressives. She seems to get a lot of attention, and I think she does a good job of giving the same message you saw from the previous two Democrats, Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal. But you can let me know what you think after we watch that clip together. And then I'll also talk about Margaret Brennan's performance as the interviewer after we watch that clip together over here.
So you have this standoff right now. How real is the risk that the Democrats end up with nothing?
You know, I know that, I believe that the entire party is committed in delivering for this country. And I know that our caucus, the House Democratic Caucus, is entirely focused on delivering for this country. But I think the question that we're having right now, and the reason why we are having this discussion right now, is because we don't want to leave communities behind. And all too often, DC politics, you know, when we have to make a compromise, the folks that get compromised are lower income, working class families, it's healthcare, it's relief, it's communities of color. And we want to make sure that we're fighting for all of us, not just some of us.
Which is why you're using your leverage right now to hold up the other $1 trillion infrastructure bill. But the head of your caucus, the Progressive Caucus, was on another network this morning, and Representative Jayapal said $1.5 trillion is just too small. That's the number that Senate moderates, Joe Manchin in particular, want to get down to. President Biden, according to our reporting from Ed O'Keefe, our correspondent, says you're going to have to settle for about $2 trillion. Is that an acceptable ceiling for you?
So here's where I think the problem is that when we talk about top line numbers, there's a lot that is hidden in that discussion. And so the reason why this conversation shouldn't be about numbers, but it should be about what substantive programs are willing to be excluded, or
that's coming from the White House.
Yeah, but the White House isn't making the demands to exclude universal child care or universal pre-K. This is coming from the more conservative wing of the Democratic Party. And those are the conversations that we need to have, because the thing is that Washington math is notoriously funny, and you can make a $3 trillion, you can make a $1 trillion bill into $2 trillion, you can make a $3 trillion bill that helps fewer people, etc. And so that's why we really need to talk about the substance of this. The budget bill that House progressives are trying to fight for, the Biden Build Back Better agenda, includes universal pre-K, free community college, expansion of Medicare. We're fighting for expansion of Medicaid. And these are the things that we are saying, in addition to the very real climate threat that we have, emissions reductions, are worth standing up for.
So, but a $2 trillion ceiling, that means you're going to have to maneuver here somewhere. Mm-hmm. The head of your caucus said this morning you're looking at shorter funding periods for programs. So instead of chopping, sort of nipping and tucking.
Yes.
So what is non-negotiable there for you?
So, you bring up an excellent point, in that the fact is that we do have to compromise with the fact that we have Senator Manchin and Sinema who refuse to support certain programs for working families. And so the compromises and the options that we have before us is, do we shorten our funding programs? Do you reduce the level of funding? Do you cut programs out together? I think that one of the ideas that's out there is fully fund what we can fully fund, but maybe instead of doing it for 10 years, you fully fund it for 5 years, or you fully fund it.
What are you thinking of when you throw that out as an example?
So I think, I think there's so many different programs in the budget bill. First of all, I think it's unfortunate that we have to, even as Democrats, have a discussion about not having a child tax credit. I think it's unfortunate that we have to compromise with ourselves for an ambitious agenda for working people. I believe that free community college should be a standard. We should have K through 14. But this is one bill, and perhaps we can vote for more down the line, and we've discussed with the president about that, continuing that funding. But there's a wide variety of those programs, and I would encourage folks in their community to also reach out to their elected officials to let them know what programs they want to make sure are kept. But I think there are some things that are very, very important to us.
For you, what is non-negotiable?
I think some of the climate provisions that we have, we cannot afford to increase carbon or just fossil fuel emissions at this time. That is simply the science. That is not something we can kick down the line. Right now, both the IPCC report saying that this is code red for humanity, as well as recent reporting saying that if you're under 40, like myself, like millions of Americans, you will be seeing a catastrophic increase in the
You're
amount.
going to run right into Senator Joe Manchin on those issues, though. You know that.
Yes, and I think Senator Manchin's going to run into the science as well.
So what do you think that means? And he also has said for him, this bill will be dead on arrival if it does not include the Hyde Amendment, which would ban federal funding for abortion.
So I think what we're seeing here is a dynamic where progressives are trying to skin this cat 9 different ways, but moderates are not really coming to the table. I don't even want to call them moderates, because there's a lot of moderates in the party that don't like being associated with some of this hardline tactics. It's a very tiny cadre of conservative Democrats. But I mean, this is the issue: is that we're saying, okay, we're going down from 6 trillion to 3 trillion. Now it's 1 trillion, and we have some of these conservatives that say, well, our line is 0, and you're lucky if you get 1. And this isn't. I want to ground this conversation, because this isn't a tit for tat between personality. This is not about me and Senator Manchin. This is about families in the Bronx. This is about people who need to take a bus to drop their kid off at school, and they're not going to be able to go back to work because they don't have childcare to go back to work.
But it is a question about the vision for the Democratic Party. And last year, you were very, very frank during the presidential race. You said in any other country, Joe Biden and I would not even be in the same party. But in America, we are. Has Joe Biden proved himself progressive enough for you now?
Yeah, I think, and those comments are referring to parliamentary systems in other countries where there's a lot more diversity. We don't have a 2-party duopoly in other countries the way that we do in ours. But I think that President Biden has been a good faith partner to the entire Democratic Party. He is, in fact, a moderate, and we disagree on certain issues, but he reaches out, and he actually tries to understand our perspective, and that is why I am fighting for his agenda with the Build Back Better Act.
And that last point is really important. I'll get to in a sec. But I just want to talk about that whole interview. I mean, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is definitely more combative than Bernie Sanders or Pramila Jayapal. I think she said things that would be offensive to Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema more, was less diplomatic, but that's kind of more her role in the party anyway. I think that Margaret Brennan did try to get that number, get her to negotiate with herself, or whatever, kind of like some of the other anchors. But I liked AOC's answer there that the number isn't even really important because there are all these budget gimmicks where you change the number of years or whatever, and so that was different than the other answers, and maybe in some ways better, because that's true. And they talked about some programs being 5 years instead of 10 years. That's kind of like the previous questioning on that. And also you saw AOC say what you heard from Pramila Jayapal, that climate change, that is what's non-negotiable, and Margaret Brennan, to her credit, pointed out that's going to be a hard sell to Joe Manchin from West Virginia, the big coal state, and also someone who's getting a lot of political donations from the fossil fuel industry. So we'll see how that works out. AOC said the science will get to Joe Manchin, but I'm a little less optimistic about that. You can let me know what you think about that down in the comment section. I did see I got some nice super chat contributions along the way here. G Wolf and Lulu Girl and Tom Trask were all talking about whether I should have a new start time. I don't know. I suppose I could do it at 3 o'clock Pacific. Oh, should I try to get a Dash and Sandy clip here real quick? Since Dash and Sandy are like interacting right over here. I'm going to get a brand new Dash and Sandy clip as I'm talking here. See, that's how you'll know it will be a live Dash and Sandy clip because they're both right over there. They're both facing away, so I guess it's Dash and Sandy from the back. But anyway, I know there are Dash and Sandy or Dandy fans out there, but I don't know. I could do 3 o'clock Pacific, I guess. I was delayed today both because of this next clip that I'm going to show you. Joe Biden held a little press conference, and so I wanted to take a clip of that to add here. And also for some other reasons I got delayed, but I don't really need to go into. But I don't know. I'm sorry for the delays, and I guess if I set it at 3 p.m., I would be much less likely to delay. I thought I could make noon, and I have made noon most weeks, but of the 18 weeks I've been doing Monday. But anyway, that's something to think about. And Deborah Strayer, I appreciate your super chat contribution with your comment about Bernie being less outrageous now. Because he, like Bernie Sanders was saying, the things he is advocating are supported by the vast majority of Americans. Although Republicans will say, well, that's because people love free stuff. But that's the point. It's the richest, the wealthiest, and the big corporations who pay the bill. And then we get all this investment in our physical infrastructure and our human infrastructure. So anyway, I appreciate all those super chat contributions. And the one other thing I wanted to say about AOC's comments there is that when she was asked, and I've seen this in the coverage, a lot of the coverage, that they talk about how, like I was saying, the progressives won because they didn't give up on this whole Build Back Better bill. But the one extra thing you have to remember about that is the Build Back Better bill is President Biden's agenda. It is what he ran on. It is what he said in his State of the Union. And you don't just have to believe the progressives saying that. That is the clip I decided to take from Biden's press conference today when he was asked about siding with the progressives. And you can see the whole press conference at least the archive live stream, if they haven't made it private. I put a link down in the video description to the White House YouTube channel. If you want to see that, here is Joe Biden also talking about how the Build Back Better plan is his plan. Over here.
I know you don't want to comment on other senators' positions in the negotiations, but what do you think the size of the reconciliation package should be? What specific dollar figure?
Well, I laid out what I thought it should be. It's not going to be that. It's going to be less. I mean, look, the legislation, both the Build Back Better piece as well as the infrastructure piece, are things that I wrote. These didn't come from, God love him, Bernie Sanders or AOC or anybody else. I wrote them. I disagreed with Medicare for All, for example. I disagreed, but I laid out what I thought would be important. For example, I think in the Build Back Better program, it's required that we, in fact, have the best education available to us. And I'll be speaking to this in detail tomorrow. But look, here's the situation. How can we, in an ever-competitive world, increasingly competitive world, how can we not meet the educational standards at least other countries are working toward? Nobody is reducing the number of years they want their children to go to school or people to go to school. You've heard me say it before, as my wife says, if any country out-educates us, they're going to out-compete us. Look what China's doing. Look what the rest of the world is doing. They're investing. They're also investing in things that relate to ability for people to go to work and stay at work. We have several million women who can't go back to work because they don't have any way to take care of their children. So to give a tax cut to a working mom to be able to afford daycare, is that bad? Is that a bad idea? I think it's a darn good idea. We'll get people back to work. So there's a lot of things in the legislation I'm going to be talking about across the country that I think the American people overwhelmingly support. But the idea that somehow this is somebody else's legislation, this is what I wrote.
So there, you hear it from Biden himself. This is not like the progressive agenda. This is Biden's agenda. And that's also an important thing to remember. And it isn't always covered that way in a lot of the corporate news media for some reason. Maybe because of influence of the fossil fuel industry, just like on Senator Joe Manchin. I don't know. You can let me know what you think about that in the comment section. But they do, I think, frame the $3.5 trillion whatever. And remember, it's over 10 years. So $3.5 trillion over 10 years is only $350 billion a year. Compare that to like the defense budget. And you'll see it's not that big. And so it covers like all those things I was talking about. You know, it covers Pramila Jayapal's 5 things, the universal child care, who, you know, that's something wildly popular. Like Deborah Strayer was saying, the old Bernie Sanders programs are now at least the most popular ones have been adopted by Biden, and they're part of his Build Back Better plan. So it's universal child care, paid family leave for 12 weeks for everybody, making sure we're taking on climate crisis, expanding healthcare, dental, vision, hearing, taking on the challenge of path to citizenship for immigrants. So those are the big 5 that Pramila Jayapal was talking about, and those are all really popular, and they're worth a few $100 billion per year, right? I think they are, but you can let me know what you think in the comment section. And what you're going to see next is a Republican from Wyoming tried to claim that these things are, you know, terrible, that he's going to say that they're going to increase our debt at one point, even though they're paid for. That's by increasing taxes on the wealthiest Americans, and, you know, who make over $400,000 a year, and big corporations. And he's going to say some other things I'll talk about after we watch the clip together. But I did tease this earlier when I was showing the first Saturday Night Live clip when Adie Bryant was doing her parody of Joe Manchin. She had Joe Manchin saying, well, we need the kids to work. We need the kids to work. Their tiny hands in the mines, or whatever her line was. Well, if you pay attention to what Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming says in this next clip, at least according to one interpretation, you know, I mean, maybe he didn't mean this for sure, but at least one valid interpretation of what he says in this next clip is that he thinks 3- and 4-year-olds should have to work to get daycare. There should be a work requirement. And I actually thought I might just take that one little clip and upload it separately as like, Republican senator wants 3- and 4-year-olds to work for their child care. You can let me know if he's misspeaking or if I'm misinterpreting, or anyway, and I'll have some other criticisms for Chris Wallace's cross-examination, especially when it comes to the means testing thing that I talked about at the end of the Pramila Jayapal clip. But anyway, I'll talk about all of that a little more with you after we watch John Barrasso getting a weak cross-examination from Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday yesterday over here.
To support something. But on this $3.5 trillion infrastructure proposal that the Democrats are focusing on right now, with trillions of dollars of increased taxes and trillions of dollars of increased debt, every Republican is united against it. We're a party that wants to grow the economy. The Democrats are a party that wants to grow the government. And you heard it right there. They're continuing to try to mislead the public by saying it is free. It is not free. They said, oh, inflation. Cedric said, oh, inflation will go down. Inflation, people are feeling the bite of inflation right now when they buy groceries, when they buy gas. all of those things. And they think if this stuff passes, this massive spending and tax bill, that inflation is going to get much worse.
But let's talk, Senator, about some of the specific programs in this big social spending bill. As part of the Trump tax cuts in 2017, you voted to increase the child tax credit from $1,000 to $2,000. Now, as part of this bill, the Democrats would extend that to 2025 at a higher level. The fact is that your state of Wyoming is one of the states that benefits most from the increase in the child tax credit. Why oppose that?
Well, we are talking about, though, a $3.5 trillion massive bill.
Well, but no, but forgive me, sir, but I'm asking you about this specific part of the bill. I understand there are parts that you don't like, but for instance, I mean, I guess part of the question is, could you have worked with them on this child tax credit, which you voted for in 2017? That's one of the things that you're voting against now. Why oppose that specific program?
It's part of the bigger bill. You know the issues for any member of the Senate or Congress. You have to look at the entire bill and say, are you for the bill or you're not? And I would point out, Chris, the Democrats are not coming to talk with Republicans on any of these things. I mean, Bernie Sanders the other day said 48 people ought to be able to overrule 2, but there are actually 100 members of the Senate. It's 52 against a number of things that the Democrats are proposing here. And the content of this bill matters almost as much, if not more, than the cost. I've gotten more letters in the last 2 weeks on one component of this, which is the issue of giving a whole new army of IRS agents to rifle through your checking account, to look at any check that you either deposit or write for over $600. This is an invasion of privacy. Every senator is hearing about this. That's included as well. So when you take a look at the entire bill, which is why, you know, Joe Manchin said it's time for a strategic pause. Well, it looks like there may be a long pause on both the real infrastructure bill and this big spending blowout bill.
You talk about things you don't like the added IRS agents and added IRS intrusion. Let's talk about another part of the bill, which is universal pre-K. In the state of Wyoming, less than a quarter of children 3 to 4, which is who would be covered in the bill, are enrolled in publicly funded preschool. Less than a quarter. Wouldn't a lot of Wyoming families benefit from universal pre-K?
There are a number of things that will help the people of Wyoming. Overall, Joe Biden's policies have been hurting the people of Wyoming. And I believe that there should be things means tested. You just don't give things universally to everybody. I think there should be work requirements involved. The Democrats are trying to separate work requirements from just free government checks and programs. You heard the congressman from the Progressive Caucus say everybody ought to get free community college. Everybody ought to get free daycare, pre-care, all of those things. And that's not the way that our country has been founded and how we work together.
I got less than a minute left. Are you and your Republican colleagues thoroughly enjoying this divide inside the Democratic Party?
Well, I'll tell you, the thing is, Joe Biden ran as a centrist and as competent. And what we're seeing is that he is neither, and people across the country are feeling less safe with Joe Biden as president. Their paychecks are less safe because of the inflation. When you look at hundreds of thousands of people illegally coming to the country every month, they feel less safe. When the generals testify, as they did, that we are less safe to terrorists. Joe Biden has now walked the plank for the socialist Bernie Sanders budget. He's man overboard and he can't swim. He is sinking and he's sunk.
Senator Barrasso, thank you very much. I love the metaphors. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Always good to talk with you, sir. Up next, we'll bring in our Sunday.
And so anyway, you see there, that end part where he lost audio, that wasn't my problem. That was Fox News's problem, and he came back and apologized for that later, though I thought it was kind of funny how when he got to like the real red meat he was throwing out there, the metaphors, as Chris Wallace, the colorful metaphors Chris Wallace was talking about there, he, like, for some reason, Chris Wallace blamed it on Skype, I guess, but you did see, as I said before I showed the clip, that John Barrasso claimed that the Build Back Better bill would increase the debt, which is false because it's paid for. He did that whole thing about means testing without any real cross-examination from Chris Wallace about the problems with means testing I talked about. And like I promised, if you listen carefully, when Chris Wallace asked that question about universal child care for 3- and 4-year-olds, he did say there should be a work requirement. He didn't say the parents should have to work. So by my interpretation, Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming is asking 3- and 4-year-olds to work for their daycare. But you can let me know what you think down in the comment section. And also, one thing I didn't criticize Chris Wallace for, but I thought was pretty bad, was that last question. Are you enjoying the divide in the Democratic Party? What kind of question is that? Anyway. That is the last clip on my main topic about the delay of the infrastructure deal, but progressives are winning, and I think that I proved my point through the clips that progressives did win this last week, and this delay, well, I mean, if they really won, we'll see what actually gets passed, what the Build Back Better bill looks like, if and when it passes, now supposedly by October 31st. But before I finish up, I do have the bonus Dash and Sandy or Dandy clip I promised, but I also promised to show you how apparently Dr. Anthony Fauci on CBS News' Face the Nation started the war on Christmas early, or I don't know, is this the time the war on Christmas starts every year? Well, the right-wing media went crazy when Anthony Fauci said this on Face the Nation yesterday.
But we can gather for Christmas, or it's just too soon to tell?
You know, Margaret, it's just too soon to tell. We've just got to concentrating on continuing to get those numbers down and not try to jump ahead by weeks or months and say what we're going to do at a particular time. Let's focus like a laser on continuing to get those cases down. And we can do it by people getting vaccinated, and also in the situation where boosters are appropriate to get people boosted, because we know that they can help greatly in diminishing infection and diminishing advanced disease, the kinds of data that are now accumulating in real time.
Now, Fauci was not the Grinch who stole Christmas there. The question was, can we get together for Christmas, or is it too early to tell? And the answer was, too early to tell. And that, I mean, you don't need to be Dr. Anthony Fauci. You just have to have lived through this pandemic to know that on October 4th, you're probably not going to be able to predict exactly what's going to be going on with the pandemic on December 25th. So, good answer, Dr. Anthony Fauci, and bad overreaction from the right wing. Unless someone else can give me some sort of argument, I don't see it. But anyway, I wanted to thank all of you for showing up, especially those super chat contributors, but everyone who showed up and gave me the live comments, the several people who told me that the other Arizona senator is Mark Kelly, married to former member of Congress Gabby Giffords, who was shot in the head by at some Meet Your Constituents event years ago. But anyway, so thank you for the people who showed up and gave me that answer that I didn't get, but I did see it. I just went by it before I also have a dog whining right next to me here, Sandy. So I should probably finish up the show, but give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you like it. There are links down in the video description. The first couple links are to become a monthly patron on Patreon or a direct PayPal contribution, where like at the $5 level I give you this sticker, and the $10 level I also throw in an ACLU Constitution, although honestly I just throw them both in at the $5 level. But anyway, I did promise the Dash and Sandy clip that I took while I was speaking to you. Let's see, and then I'm going to show you a bonus Dash clip from several days ago that I think is worth extending the show for. But first, here is that now Sandy's lying there quietly, but Dash isn't around. But before, they were both here, as you can see in the clip where I was talking in the background over here. As I'm talking here, see, that's how you'll know it will be a live Dash and Sandy clip, because they're both right over there. They're both facing away, so I guess it's Dash and Sandy from the back. But anyway, See, it's an almost live Dash and Sandy clip, but I actually had like a real action clip with Dash the cat the other day. A lizard got in the house, and I have like 9 seconds of that I was going to show you over here. And don't worry, no lizards were harmed in the filming of that episode. I later captured that lizard in a box unharmed and released it outside. But so there you got both a live, almost live Dash and Sandy or Dandy clip, plus that bonus one from a few days ago with real action in there. So anyway, thanks for joining me. I will be back next Monday. I'll think about the suggestions to move it to 3 p.m. Pacific instead of noon Pacific. That might actually work. And I always want to support my viewers' ability to drink during the live stream, so I guess that might make sense. You can let me know for the recorded show viewers if you care, if it's going to make it harder to see. I don't know. We'll see how it goes until next Monday, or until I have some reason to upload some other video. I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.